I just realized we don't have a name for this yet. We'll call this the Flurry Sports Fantasy Football Show for now. My name is Zach Bruner. We got the dream team back from fantasy football season. The three guys from Lombardi Sweep. You may recognize us. We're the ones that help deliver you a fantasy football championship. If you did watch every Wednesday, in the middle is Trevor Land, and on the right is Luke Reimer. How are you two doing? You guys, how was golf today? You both separately played golf, right?
Yeah. I did not. Mine fell through.
Oh, okay.
Did have some five guys, though.
Hey, let me tell you. Ours almost fell through because my dad set the tee time for Whistling Straits. They had no record of it, but they believed him enough, and I was freaking out enough that they pushed us out anyway. So if you're watching this from Whistling Straits, we appreciate you. We really do.
Trevor had tears in his eyes saying, "Do you know who I am?"
I did. I said, do you know who I am, sir? Like, this is land. Like, do you not understand the power Flurry Sports has?
Do you know who I am? I host a podcast.
Yeah. And honestly, you can't tell me hey, they heard Flurry Sports. I think that's why we got out, if I'm being honest. They saw a blue check mark next to Zach, and they said, oh, shit.
That's right, yeah. It comes with a lot of power. Twitter did say that when they gave it to me. Mm-hmm. So far, so much has changed. So much more respect. It's crazy. Okay, so today, and I think the plan going forward, people watching live, I think the plan is going to be every single Friday, we will be doing a fantasy football show. Until the season, we will still have something Fridays most likely, but our main show will probably be going back to Wednesday or a different day like that. However, today, I wanted to start off with something that not a lot of people are doing. Like, people talk about Dynasty fantasy football. I get that, but I know there's a lot of people who are wanting to dip their toe in the water, wanting to do a Dynasty league. But to be completely honest, it kind of is intimidating, and especially for someone who has no idea what's going on. So I have done a few Dynasty leagues. These two are in their very first Dynasty leagues this year, so I think we can cover all bases. But I kind of want to do a Dynasty Fantasy Football 101, things to keep in mind when you are starting your first league, how to start it, what different things mean, because there are stuff in Dynasty that aren't even available in redraft leagues, so you may have no idea. I want to go through that, some basic strategy. If anyone has questions watching live or after the fact, definitely tweet at us, leave it in the comments wherever you are watching, and one of us will talk to you. Who knows who? But let's just start off here with just stuff to keep in mind when starting a Dynasty League. Say you want to be the commissioner, or you're trying to get a group of people together to be a new Dynasty League. And in my personal opinion, the most important thing when you are starting it, you need to have a good group. Like, you need to have an active group, a group of people you like that you want to talk to next year and in 2 years and in 3 years, because that's the whole point. You're not trying to do a Dynasty League that crashes and burns after a year. And then on top of that, it should be, I think you need to place a higher emphasis on quality over quantity, if that makes sense. And for a perfect example, the Dynasty League that all three of us are in together that we just started this year, we have 8 people. And is 8 the most ideal number for a Dynasty League? I don't think so. Could we have filled it with 2 to 4 more people? 100%. However, in my personal opinion and in my view, I'm imagining we will be doing an expansion draft next year and expanding the league to 10 to 12 people. So I didn't want to bring in a couple people that, again, I don't want to be around next year. What's your guys' thoughts on that? I just think that's honestly the most important part when starting something like this.
Yeah, my idea on it too is that if you get a good group of guys, a good group that you can communicate with, that'll communicate with you quickly, whether it be for trades, to draft, whatever. Guys that you can know, guys you can razz around and try to throw some trades around and talk a little bit, rather than sending one trade out, not hearing from anyone, getting the trade was canceled, and then never hearing from that guy again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think the big thing is, you're able to razz on too. Like, one person is going to win. And obviously, we all want to win. Like, we're taking this seriously, as in, we want to win. We're going to do everything we can to win. But at the same time, like, a lot of the fun in fantasy football isn't from winning, because there can only be one winning. Like, obviously, that's a lot of it, but a lot of it is the camaraderie and being together. So when you have a league like that, especially one that's so based on that and knowing the people you're with, it's huge. It's huge. And compared to other drafts where you don't know people, like you said, Luke, with those trades, it's going to go through. You can have good conversations, talk to people, expand the conversation.
Then you feel a little better about offering your buddy like Ted Ginn for Patrick Mahomes, and then accidentally accepting it than you would if you did it to a random person.
Right. And to that point, when you're building this initial group, I mean, you're taking a pretty damn big risk if you're saying, hey, say your sister's boyfriend or whatever that she's been dating for a month, you like fantasy football, want to be in a dynasty league. That dude might be dumped in like 2 months, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is awkward. Let's try to make sure these people are going to be active, to your guys' point, but also going to be around next year. Don't invite your 99-year-old neighbor. They may not be living next year. That just creates headaches. Like, let's be smart with the construction of your league.
Honestly, in my experience, 2 months to hanging around for that boyfriend, good for him. But 99-year-old neighbor, hey, garage sale for fantasy football. But yeah, I mean, it's big, and you touched on 8 people not being obviously ideal. But there's also benefits to that too. It feels, everybody better. It's more competitive. Everybody has a chance. Everybody has really good players. So there are pros and cons to everything about it.
And I think it's interesting to talk about our league in particular, because we do have 8 teams, and there's different ways to do it. So in a typical dynasty league, I think a pretty standard roster construction is your starters or whatever, and then it's a super deep bench, 20 people usually. And I took the opposite approach for our dynasty league with the thought in mind that we're for sure going to have an expansion draft next year. So I figured it would make the league more competitive, actually, if we had a smaller bench. So I actually cut that completely in half. We have an 8-team league. It's a super flex league. That's neither here nor there, but it does take quarterbacks, I guess, off of free agency. But we only have a 10-man bench. So now there's for sure going to be studs on the waiver wire that people need to grab. Maybe there's going to be more roster movement in terms of dropping players, picking up players. And then whoever we add to the league next year, obviously they're going to be able to pick some people from our active roster, but they're going to be able to pick up relevant people. Like, I think, Ryan Fitzpatrick's out there, but like there's like 6 to 8 maybe starting quarterbacks or something on free agency right now. And that's a big deal. Like, and same thing with other positions, obviously, but that's a way to get around having only 8 people. And again, next year, 10, 12 team league, we may expand it to 20-man bench or something.
Yeah, and you bring up, competitiveness, and, Luke's bench is Corey Davis and Robert Woods, and your bench, Zach, has Miles Sanders, and mine has Tyler Lockett. Like, it kind of feels almost like, if you've ever played in like a 4-team league just to shoot the shit, and you have everybody on your team. Like, it's a nice happy ground where you have that, but you also know that you don't have to beat only 3 people, and you can still have like your manhood when you say, oh, how big was your league? So it's a nice common ground.
And for like I was talking about, for next year, we were expecting to expand the league, expand the rosters, do all that. And I think that's also a fun thing with Dynasty Fantasy Football. Like, we're going to have the same teams, essentially. We're going to have the same people, but we can change the settings of the league. And I think that's something different about Dynasty, that it makes it more exciting, but also keep in mind your league mates. If you're a commissioner or something, don't be changing the settings without talking to them. But if there's a league-wide poll or something, let's say, for whatever example, let's say our league next year, we all decided we actually want to do not super flex. We're just going to do 1 quarterback, but we ended up doing 6 flex or something. Completely changing it. It could change the way the league runs. It changes the way each team ranks, who's better, who's worse. And that's something that you can do normally down the line. There's normally not a year 2 thing, but let's just say year 5, 6, 7, when things are getting stale and Jimmy won 3 years in a row and you want to take him down a peg. Maybe we change the settings or something. That's the way you do it.
Yeah.
You guys know a Jimmy or what? You're laughing a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I have a buddy who I am 1-8 against him the past 3 years, and I am continuously in the playoffs doing well. For whatever reason, I play Jimmy. He knows who he is. He's watching this, and he just destroys me. And it's not fun. It's like, if I played an NBA player in the gym, it's sad, but it's nice. To your point, everybody has a say too. And again, when you know all the people, it's easy. You're not just putting up a poll that nobody's responding to.
I anticipate to be the Jimmy in this league.
Not with Todd Gurley on your bench. No.
Never know. Well, I know about Todd Gurley. Never know about the rest of his roster. Couple more things about differences between redraft and dynasty, but then I want to get into your guys' personal point of view and thoughts doing a dynasty draft for the first time, how your thoughts specifically changed maybe before and during the draft, whatever. But I mean, common things people always say about dynasty, obviously youth becomes more valuable for positions other than quarterback, since they can honestly play till they're 40, 45. In Tom Brady's case, maybe Aaron Rodgers' case as soon as he comes back. But wide receivers, Julio is certainly not at the top of the priority list because of his age. Players like that. Go get your guy isn't a big thing too. Obviously, in redraft leagues, a lot of experts will tout, go get the players you like. It's your team. It's a game. Have fun with it. But in Dynasty especially, if we're all Packer fans here, but if Devontae Adams specifically is your guy, or Robert Tonyan, maybe a better example just because he's going in mid to late rounds or something, reach for him. He's going to be with your roster, hopefully, for the next decade. So definitely go get the guy that you like. And if there's somebody you hate and you're never wanting to cheer for them, it's going to make game day suck, don't draft them.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to bring up, because I've been a big proponent ever since I've been playing fantasy football of getting guys that I like on my team, because it makes it that much more fun to root for. I don't want to root for Adam Thielen. I don't want to root for Allen Robinson, So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big advocate of stacking up on players that you like that are good, because you're going to have them for however long the league is.
And one of the big things about that too is in redraft leagues, you can just have a bad draft spot, or people draft horribly or so dumb, and it happens. They draft so dumb that it hurts you, it throws you back, even if you know what you're doing. And those leagues, it's tough because you have to trade. Where in Dynasty, you can trade a first round pick. It might hurt you, but you can go get those guys because you can trade future picks. And when the league is done, for redraft, it's done. In this, obviously it'll hit its low, but it's still going on. You still have something to talk about, all that stuff.
100%. And that's a good point too. Trades, and especially in Dynasty, they can get crazy depending on how many draft picks, how many years out that your league has them. You can be trading that. You can be trading your fab budget if you do that. I mean, there's so many ways, and to your point, you're locked into a draft spot in redraft leagues a lot of the time. Obviously, startup drafts is the most relevant for this in terms of it, because usually it's just a rookie draft after that. But how many trades did we see in our draft? I was trading nonstop, it seemed like. Yeah. I was doing it an obnoxious amount. But there's someone you like. It's an investment, like I was saying, for the next decade. Don't want to be losing to the person with Aaron Rodgers for the next decade.
Well, and the best thing is too, there are many different draft styles. In redraft, who's going to give me the win this year? In our league, I went a lot for who's going to get me to win now. I'm not so worried about the future, whereas people like Coach Schroeder went a lot more for future, and people like Justin Brownlow, I think. So it's not just, who's going to win, who's the best player. That can kind of get repetitive, especially when you're in a lot of leagues. But in Dynasty, multifaceted.
Yeah, Trevor, I totally agree with you. I went the same road as you. Might as well try to win the first couple and deal with it later. But I would like to formally apologize to you guys for monopolizing the Packers with Rodgers, Jones, and Devontae.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Future Denver Broncos quarterback and Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver.
Well, another thing too, if I can go back to trades real quick, just for a quick second, is end of the season, like we've all had bad fantasy teams, right? Like maybe not you, Zach, but the other two of us have.
But
like if your team sucks, even in keeper leagues, like what do? Trade for a keeper? Like you have nothing to do. Your season's shot. You're done. In Dynasty, shit, maybe trade some of your good players away, get draft picks, and retool. Like you're not locked into a box.
Your point, in one of my Dynasty leagues, it is a fucking hellscape. It is everything went wrong that could go wrong last year. It was a nightmare. I'm kind of in the mediocre phase. It's certainly not good enough to contend. It's not bad enough. I was third worst last year, and my team was better than that, but it was just a lot of injuries. Julio is my number one wide receiver. Now he's on Tennessee. So now I'm trying to trade him, but that's not going to happen. And then the rest of my wide receivers really suck. So, yeah, it's not a fun place to be. I'm trying to be a seller already for the season, but what can you do? These guys are killers. So, and then, one last thing about Dynasty Leagues here in terms of just general topics. And again, you can apply it to every kind of league, certainly redraft leagues, but Dynasty, I find it to be even more important that you need to know your league settings. To your point, or to what we were saying earlier, that the settings could change year to year, and it really does change the way you draft. But knowing the type of players you are starting, we're doing a super flex league, multiple flex. And I'll talk about Taxi Squad in a second, but we have 2 IR spots that are suspended player eligible. We have 2 Taxi Squad spots, and something to keep in mind when you're drafting, because you can use that to your advantage. And I'll explain what Taxi Squad is first, and then I'll say how I specifically used it to my advantage when I was drafting. But a Taxi Squad, in the most general sense, is kind of like a practice squad. And you can change how many years a player is eligible for it. I'll just keep it at rookie because that's what we have, and that's the most general. So you can put a rookie on there up into a certain point of the year. For us, week 1, it locks. At that point, you can't put any other rookies on your Taxi Squad. However, you can take them off at any point. So if it's week 5 and all of a sudden I have Trey Lance on my Taxi Squad, he's starting for the 49ers, I can take him off. But as soon as I take him off, he can't go back on. Nobody else can replace him. It's just another IR type of spot where you can move a player where they are not counting against your active roster. You can leave them there for the full season. Obviously, it's Dynasty, so you keep them for next year. It's sort of a developmental spot. And I think for Dynasty, it needs to be, I think it's a lot of fun to have for every type of league. And again, this year for us, it's just rookies. Maybe next year we'll change it to 1 and 2 year players. So if you kept Mac Jones or whatever, and he's still not starting next year, maybe he can still be there. That would be a league-wide vote. We'd figure that out. But as 2 people who are playing Dynasty for the first time, which means you haven't encountered a Taxi Squad spot, what's your guys' overall thought about Taxi Squad? Maybe some initial strategies that popped into your mind, or just overall feelings about that?
I like it. I like it a lot. Obviously, I was coming in super blind. I know fantasy, but blind for Dynasty. And, it's nice because you have guys that obviously are going to explode, or are rookies, they're not going to get time, but they're going to get time in like a year. And it seems kind of stupid just for them to, go to who has the highest budget, go to who has the best draft slot that one year. And so for me, the way I took it, I looked at who has the highest ceiling in a year. Didn't get the guys I wanted, but like one of them is Kylan Hill for the Packers. Aaron Jones, he'll be back 2 months or 2 years at max, right, with his contract, I think. something like that. So, a guy like Kylan Hill is going to be really big in 2 years, but he's not going to be a big guy now. So why waste the time?
Right.
Yeah, as far as taxi spots go, this is where I kind of effed up in the draft a little bit because I drafted now. I didn't draft any rookie. I think I drafted one rookie in Devontae Smith. So I didn't plan for that. That's proved to check your settings because I was under the impression, then I went along with it and lost my mind down the road. But I agree. I think it's great. Just like Trevor said, Zach, just like you said, if Trey Lance, let's say Jimmy Garoppolo has an all right year and Trey Lance is not starting yet, then you have him and you can start him next year without having to worry about, him taking up a roster spot or him whatever. So it's really interesting way to play. It gives you a little more freedom, a little more feasibility to move around and kind of push some pieces around to finally fill out your roster maybe after 2-3 years.
And it becomes even more relevant in the deeper leagues. Like we were talking, ours is just an 8-team, but let's just say you're in a 14 or 16 team dynasty with a 20-man bench, and you're really reaching every single year for your rookie picks, and you're possibly drafting a 7th round rookie in actuality, especially when we're talking about running backs and stuff like that. Who knows if they're going to make the team, much less be fantasy relevant. And yeah, you can just put them in your taxi squad and maybe next year they'll get a chance. Who knows? I think it's really smart and I like it a lot. But I can tell you how I used mine specifically, just because with the shallow bench, we only have 10 guys on our bench, so I wanted to see how many players I can really pack onto my team. So I drafted both Trey Lance and Mac Jones as rookies. Obviously, they're not going to be starting week 1. Drafted both of them seconds after the draft. I put them both on IR, or in my taxi spot, rather. So that freed up 2 spots. And then I picked up Will Fuller, who is suspended. I put him on my IR. So then I still have 2 free spots on my team. I picked up James Conner and I picked up Jordan Love. So again, is Jordan Love going to be anything? Is James Conner going to be anything? Who knows? But it's just free spots on my team. I can still move Mac Jones and Trey Lance off my taxi squad at any point up until week 1 and move other people on after week 1, or starting at week 1, then nobody else can get moved on. Will Fuller obviously suspended to start the year from Miami. He was going to start the year on IR for me anyways. That's just another way to be flexible. And other people can still do that. You can pick up rookies. You can pick up people who are suspended. And it's just a strategy. I do the same type of thing for redraft in IR spots and stuff like that too. But yeah, I don't know. Is there any other general things to talk about Dynasty leagues before we get into your guys' thoughts, how they differ?
Yeah, I think one of them would be make sure, like we kind of talked about it with the people, but make sure you know the type of fantasy player they are too. I have some leagues with some friends, and some of the people, it's great for redraft years, but when you get to Dynasty, you can't have guys that know very little about football and are kind of just winging it. That ruins the league for years. Guys who pay attention maybe the first 5 weeks and then don't again. You got to understand. Like, you don't need anybody that's going to go try hard on their phone for an hour a day, but you need to have guys that are at least somewhat, I don't want to say committed because it almost sounds like a cult, but they're going to be there, and they're going to show up and they're going to do their thing. That's important to know because it's going to ruin a league and you're going to have to start all over.
No, I agree with you, Trevor. Rather than a 6-7 month commitment, it's almost a 12-month commitment, having to keep up on the news, see who's doing well in training camp, see who's getting arrested in the offseason here or there, because it does affect a lot of what's going on. See who's playing good in college, where they're going to end up in the NFL draft, shit like that.
Yeah, they say Dynasty leagues never sleep. I mean, it can be March 1st or something, and you can pull off a Dynasty trade. Never know. Things happen 24/7. A lot of Dynasty leagues certainly slow down in the offseason, but there's always moves to be made to your point, if someone gets arrested, maybe you're trying to sell before your league mate heard about the news. I mean, there's so many strategies involved. I don't think anything's off the table. And then to your point, Trevor, you don't need someone who's on their phone the entire time. But there's nothing really worse than sending someone a trade request or something, and it's a week later and they still haven't even denied it or counteroffered or anything. It's just into the void and you don't know if they've seen it. It's just super annoying. Much less the people who don't start their players every week and someone else got an easy matchup against them when you had to face their tough when they were relevant and stuff, you know.
It's one thing to babysit, and especially if they don't know people's values, it's one thing to babysit and basically run their team for them for 4 months. It's a whole other thing to have to do it for years, because that's the point of Dynasty, right? It's doing it for years. So do you really want to babysit anybody? No.
And don't be afraid if you have somebody like that in your startup and they ended up not liking it, or you ended up figuring out they're not the type of person, you thought they were for fantasy. I honestly don't think you need to be afraid to kick somebody out of a league. I would say make sure it's a league poll. I would make sure you're not, the commissioner just trying to kick people out you don't like, but you don't want to be stuck with them for a decade. Like, screw that. Yeah. So I'm actually curious. I'm not sure if I asked you guys this before. How long have you been playing fantasy? Like normal redraft fantasy?
It's got to be since maybe even middle school. Obviously not high stakes or anything, but when did I graduate high school? 2016. So 10, probably a decade to 12 years.
I really started out when the year that Arian Foster was really hot. Would that be 2010? I think, yeah, 2010. So probably about a decade as well. But as for really serious, because I'd always play with random dudes on NFL, or I love drafts and then not look at my team for a year. I was horrible. For actual serious, probably 5 years ago, for a paid league. So if you've played in paid leagues and free leagues, you know the difference that I'm talking about. There's 100% the difference.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, you guys have plenty of fantasy experience under your belt, and so I'm interested to know what your guys' thoughts going to Dynasty is. First, I'll just say I actually got introduced to fantasy football in, I believe, 2007 or 2008. In middle school, we used to have little clubs or whatever where teachers would do their bullshit. You'd have to go. One that I always signed up for, I was just basically watching old NFL tape, is sick. But then there's one teacher started. It was a fantasy football club, and we would have groups of 4, and we drafted a fantasy football team. In the first year I did it, I had Tom Brady, Randy Moss, and that was the year they broke records and destroyed. And I won. So obviously, since I won and I thought I was good at it, I just fell in love with it. So I've been playing stupid long, I guess. I actually liked fantasy NBA a lot more than NFL in high school, though. NBA, I was playing with my friends, die hard.
Yeah, I started 7th grade for math. She had a formula for the points that would use algebra, and that's how it would teach us. That's basically, I think, why she didn't want to teach. But that was the year Michael Vick went off, and it was a salary cap. You could buy people for the price. And so that's when I fell in love with the reformed Mike Vick and Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
To your point, Zach, just kind of going a little off topic here with the NBA. I really fell in love with NBA fantasy once DFS came around, because I think that's a lot more fun than NFL, because it's every day, But I was right there with you, forefront, because I've always been a huge NBA fan right there. At NBA, NFL is just I've always had a blast doing it.
Yeah, my college years were just DFS NBA, man. That's how Flurry Sports and a lot of lottery tickets. That was sick, though. I made more money with DFS. Lottery tickets, I don't know if we broke even or not. But DFS, that's how Flurry Sports started, because I was selling lineups I don't anymore, FanDuel, even though you already banned my account forever anyway. But selling lineups, made a few $1,000 doing that. And then we just built this site. And look at us go. Now we're still fantasy and betting degenerates here, which is good. But so you guys have been playing redraft for a long time. You guys get redraft, redrafting. Your mind is set for redraft. Obviously, you're thinking, how is this person going to help this year? What's their role this year? What's their value this year? And you guys got put into a dynasty draft this year, which is a hard reset. I would say, at least it was for me, like trying to think forward, where could this player be in 5 years? Trevor can start. Like, did you go into the draft with a very, very different strategy in place? And then did that change once you saw how everybody else was drafting, basically?
It didn't change. My strategy was always like win now, because like I obviously am not nearly as in tuned with all the ins and outs as anybody else. So if I try to go for long term or try to play it like I should in Dynasty, I'm going to lose because I don't know nearly as much. So I tried to go long term or short term, win now, and then as I figure it out, be able to move the pieces. And so, the one thing that I did notice that I don't usually do is, whether it turns out well or not, we'll see. But I drafted 2 running backs early in a super flex league. Ballsy move, but I looked at their age. Obviously, Derrick Henry was off the board. Kamara and Cook, they are 25. So for running backs, they're getting up there, but that's 4 years. So it was one of those things where I'm looking for the best player, but I'm certainly looking at age now.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because just to go a little more specific on that question is I had the number 1 pick. And so I went in with this mindset that I'm going to get my guys. I'm going to get Devontae Adams. I'm going to get the guys I like, the guys that are good. With the number 1 pick, that kind of throws a wrench in it, especially in Dynasty. So obviously I took Patrick Mahomes. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with that pick. And I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan. I love him. But it just kind of throws through my whole game plan off, I guess. Because I had this idea of the young guys who I wanted, when I'm going to get them here or there. But to get that was interesting, as well as Trevor, we kind of mentioned how we're kind of drafting win now. I feel like maybe some people are trying to draft for win now. Some people are trying to draft for the future, like you mentioned with Coach. So it was interesting to see what players were available when, and really debating whether you should take them or why aren't other people taking them here or there. Because it's not that 1 year league where you should have all the best players. It's that league where you want the best players come 4 or 5 years from now.
Well, another problem is Luke and I were back to back. Luke was first pick, I was second. So when it would snake back, and Luke and I had the same draft strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We like a lot of the same guys, and we both like building teams the same way. So as you can assume, there were a couple expletives that were thrown lovingly, but they were thrown. So there's always like that dynamic. Like, it's not just, okay, next. It's like, holy crap, I thought I had this guy in the 10th. Here he goes in the 7th.
Do you guys have your teams up in front of you? If not, I can bring up here too.
Of course I do. It's the most beautiful thing I have in my life.
So, like, to your guys' point, though, you guys were both drafting win now. I am always sort of thinking in that way, though I definitely made more decisions than normal thinking down the road. If there was a tiebreaker, certainly was in mind that there is you. So I would consider my team more of a hybrid than just simply win now. But I think we should read off our teams, and then I will read off Coach's team after that as well, just because we all think he certainly was drafting for the future more so than right now. I don't remember where I drafted, but I'll just read off my team. Again, super flex plus another flex. I have Josh Allen, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, TJ Hawkinson, Cooper Kupp, Carson Wentz, Steelers defense, Jordan Love, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Ronald Jones, Miles Sanders, Robbie Anderson, Antonio Brown, Deontay Johnson, Hunter Henry, Tyler Higbee, And then I have Will Fuller, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. Trevor, what's your team?
I would like to quick preface this and say that when I drafted defenses, I was in the middle of something. So I may or may not have drafted 2 defenses back to back at the same damn bye week. Whatever. I got Russell Wilson. I got Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Adam Thielen, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Irv Smith Jr., Austin Eckler at the flex, Tom Brady at the super flex, Rams defense, Tannehill, Carson, Madison, running back from Minnesota backup, Allen Robinson, Tyler Lockett, Juju, Michael Gallup, Tunyon, Tampa defense, Washington defense, and then the 2 on the taxi are Amari Rodgers and Kylan Hill.
So mine, I have at Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, and I know what everyone's thinking. You said you took Patrick Mahomes. Well, fuck you. I wanted Aaron Rodgers as my starting quarterback. Aaron Jones, Kareem Hunt, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Rob Gronkowski, Julio Jones, Patrick Mahomes, the Superflex. I have the Chiefs defense. Jameis Winston, Damian Harris, A.J. Dillon, Travis Etienne, Robert Woods, Corey Davis, Hollywood Brown, Devontae Smith, Logan Thomas, and Todd Gurley. And
I was wondering why you skipped them.
And I haven't put anyone on Taxi Squad yet because I don't know what I want to do with that yet.
And then Kevin's team here. He certainly, I would say he started going hybrid, and then his bench is filled with people for the future. So that's certainly a good way to do it. He has Lamar Jackson, Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, Odell Beckham, T. Higgins, Mike Williams, Travis Kelce, Curtis Samuel, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Fields, Henderson, Tony Pollard, Myles Gaskin, Javonte Williams, I think it's Trey Sermon, Jalen Reagor, Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman, and then Cole Kmet. He's got nobody on his IR taxi squad yet. But obviously his bench is full of, or defense, right? His bench is full of guys of like, they're not really going to be much this year. At least they don't appear, but they're certainly guys that could blossom into that starting level person end of the year, next year, year after. So that's certainly a completely different strategy than what you two took. But one, maybe he drafted, I believe, at the very end of the first round. So maybe he saw you guys going hard for this year and thinking, hey, maybe I'll try to take their money in a couple of years instead of this year. You know?
Yeah, one of the things with that too, if his team this year does well, right, because he's got guys, then he can sell some of those pieces to guys like me and Luke who haven't really planned for this future to bulk up. Or if he's horrible, he's got a lot of guys down the road, a lot of guys he can throw in a taxi squad, and he's also got pieces that are good enough to feed people for good draft picks. So no matter what, he's covered.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Do you guys have anything else to say about Dynasty Leagues here?
Yeah, I would. I actually, as recent as you asked me like a month ago, right, Zach? I'd say like this whole started up a month ago.
Sure.
The draft is like a month long.
Yeah, well, if it didn't take you 6 hours to take Mahomes with the first pick, don't talk to me. But like as recently of like 2 months ago, I have talked to my friends all the time about how I think Dynasty is the dumbest league ever. I thought it was incredibly stupid. And then I thought about it more. And I always loved keepers because you can keep guys. And I was like, wait a second, why don't I just keep my whole damn team? And it's nice. Like you have like your own draft. And for people that are really into football, you've always wanted to say like what I would do if I have a team. You can't do that, but you can do this and you can trade. And again, it's a nice excuse. Like in the middle of, freaking March when nothing's going on, I can just text you out of the blue, Zach, and say, hey, give me this guy. Like we can get something done. So, if you really love football, it's definitely for you. And even if you just kind of like football, like you said, you can get your guys and just party. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, Zach, I told you this. To me, it's the exact same thing as a Madden franchise online, which I have a lot of fun doing. So if you're thinking about fantasy football and you like playing Madden franchise, this is right up your alley. I will tell you guys, too, this isn't for listeners, just for your guys' information. The picture, my picture on my team, if you guys are wondering, is me eating my first Whataburger burger in Arizona.
Is it? I've never had a Whataburger. So.
What are your thoughts
good,
on
right?
Whataburger?
It's my favorite.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
As a fast food connoisseur that I am.
If you talk down on it, we're gonna have a problem. Okay,
Right.
My team was gonna have to clap your team's ass week 1 because for the sake of Whataburger. So
thank God we don't got that. I guess
The Whataburger beef.
yeah. If you enjoyed this, definitely tell us, ask questions, give us future show topics. This is going to be the group going forward for the full season. There's going to be other shows just like last year sprinkled in, but we got a lot of fun stuff planned. We got a wheel planned of stuff. Like everything good has a wheel. You talk about Wheel of Fortune,
Wheel of Cheese,
Wheeler, Wisconsin.
You can't drive a car without wheels.
Yeah, Lamborghini can't do anything without wheels, right?
Yeah,
An airplane can't land without wheels.
Like the eyes of London. That's a giant wheel. What would London be without that? A garbage city. So
right.
I mean, do you need any other examples? Because
Ferris wheel is my favorite ride at the circus as well.
And without a Ferris wheel, would there have ever been Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Who knows? You never know.
That's a deep. Maybe that's next week's show. We'll figure that out.
And without a Ferris wheel, would the hot dog contest even exist on Coney Island? They're noted for their Ferris wheel. And
then we don't have the best champion of all time, Joey Chestnut.
So you're welcome, Joey Chestnut.
Yeah.
We'll leave you guys with that. But yeah, let us know if you have any questions about Dynasty Fantasy Football. Let us know if you have any topics you want us to cover or just any fantasy questions for us to chime in on. Tweet them at any of our, if you're listening, I guess I should say, at Trevorland2, at Luke Rhyme, REIM, and then at Fantasy Flurry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Real quick, if you look at my Twitter, I sometimes am very, how do I say, in your face about stuff. Hey, when it comes to fantasy football, we're all a family here. So don't worry. No question is a stupid question.
Well, there's stupid questions. I don't like that saying.
Like, is Todd Gurley destined for the Hall of Fame? Stupid question, right? Because he is. Yeah. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, stupid answers too. There's such a thing as a stupid answer. We found out.
Hey, also shout out Ted Ginn, one of my favorites.
Tired today, yeah. But yeah, that is the insert name here podcast, fantasy or Flurry Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. I don't know. You can listen to this as a podcast at Flurry Sports Podcast. Let's say every Tuesday. Maybe that's when I'll upload this. Maybe not. Yes or no. Or you can watch us live at the Flurry Sports YouTube channel, at Fantasy Flurry on Twitter, at Flurry Sports Facebook page and Twitch page, I believe. All sounds correct to me. We'll figure it out, though. But we'll be back next week, maybe. Bye.
Peace.